Welcome to Agape Ministries podcasts, a whole new way of thinking. Episode 13, Part 2 of Sister Helen Prejean's talk, Made for Love.
It just happened to us, we're plunked down by each other. And a friend who was working in the prison coalition office right around the corner from Hope House said, "Hey, Sister Helen, you want to write a letter? Somebody on death row?" I said, "Yeah, I could write some letters." I just want to say that we need to put into we need to put into theology the sneakiness of God. Because when Chavez said to me, "Sister Helen, you want to write to a man on death row?" I never dreamed they were going to kill this person in an electric chair. We hadn't had an execution in Louisiana in over 20 years. There'd been an unofficial moratorium on the death penalty that had begun in the 60s and went through the 70s. I hadn't even noticed in 1976 that the Supreme Court had put the death penalty back. What did I have to do with the death penalty? I don't know anybody on death row. And so I said, "Yeah, I'll write a letter." And he gave me the name of the man. And I sat down and I wrote the man. Patrick Sonnier was his name. In the movie, Tim Robbins explained, in Dead Man Walking, you have two stories, two death row inmates, two victims' families. And he said that's too many characters in a film. The reason a film is always going to be different from a book is because you got to pare it down. You got 2 hours to take people on this journey. But he was real clear about what the journey was going to be. Because we had a lot of films in the United States, and it always ended with, if the person was guilty of the crime, it ended with the execution, justice was done, and the reflection stopped. He said, "We're going to do a film the way you wrote your book, and it's the journey I'm going to take you on now with me, because first getting into it, writing a man, not dreaming they were going to kill him. God's grace comes up underneath us when we need it, not ahead of time. And the Spirit works with us gently when we're ready, and it's like the petals of a rose that open." So first it was, would you write a letter? Yeah, I could write a letter. And then you know what the problem was? He wrote back. And there was an encounter. And there are so many forms of separation in our societies, in the United States, just from the fact that you live in a suburb, you're not in the inner city. Who do you mix with? Who do you meet? Who do you know? And we met, and there's a man writing a letter, and he was so grateful I had found him. He said, "I've been trying to go it alone, but then it's so lonely to try to go it alone. Like, why be close to anybody if they kill me anyway?" And that's a moral dilemma that a lot of people on death row have to deal with. Don't get close to anybody because you're going to die, or they're going to be killed ahead of you. Why be close to anybody? But he said, "I was so glad to get your letter. Sister, I'd love to write to you." And it'd always end with, "Jesus loves you, Sister Helen, and so do I." And then I found out from his letters he had nobody to visit him and that he was alone. How many times had I taken in my hands the scriptures, and how many retreats had I made, and meditating on Matthew 25, "I was hungry, you gave me to eat. I was thirsty, you gave me to drink. I was in prison, and you came to me." I'm writing a man. The man has nobody to visit him. I'm praying with the words, and the words catch fire. I write him a letter. "Hey, Pat, I'll come see you sometime." He is so excited when he gets that letter that he was going to get a visitor. Prisons are places of great abandonment and exile. And from the time you get up in the morning till the time you put your head on the bed at night to go to sleep, you get 1,000 signals that you are disposable human waste and you are worth nothing. And he gets a letter, and then he gets a promise of a visit. And all excitedly in the return mail, here come all the visitor forms. And then sneaky part of God, part 2. He goes, "Well, I'm a Catholic and you're a nun. Would you be my spiritual advisor?" I'll fill it in, spiritual advisor. I've got no felony record. I'm a bona fide nun. And I don't know. The grace isn't there yet. I don't know that 2 years from the time that I write this letter, and then I'm going to visit him and I'm going to get to know him and I'm going to accompany him. 2 years from the time of the first letter, he's going to be killed at midnight in the electric chair, and at 5:45 in the evening, everybody's got to leave the death house except the spiritual advisor who will be with him, who will walk with him. Grace, not ahead of time, but in the time, it was there for me. And so the journey began to Patrick Saunier and then to his death. In there, I know that there's been a murder victim family. I know somebody's been murdered, but I figured when he trusted me enough, he'd tell me. But I didn't want to be naive. And that first visit to him, I got to tell you, and you see it in the book, in the story, I was nervous as a cat because they locked me in a room and they say, we're going to go get your man for you. And then I'm thinking, we got 2 hours. I never visited with a murderer before. It's like anybody can write nice letters. And I'm pacing up and down. I'm holding on to my cross like, Jesus, help me. How did I get here? And what's he really going to be like? Are we going to be able to have a normal conversation? Like, what's his face going to look like? I don't even know what his face looks like. And surely if you murdered somebody, your face has got to look a little different. You know, like your jaw, or your eyes are mean, or... And so I'm waiting and waiting, and then I hear the leg chains, actually, and I hear his voice. He wasn't black, he was white. The leg chains dragging on the floor as the guards, and he has a belt around his waist. He's handcuffed to the belt. All these signals of dangerous man. The Supreme Court has said you only give the death penalty to the worst of the worst murders. Nobody knows what to Sam Hill that means. We really don't know what it means, because if you kill any innocent person and the universe is lost, of a unique universe we each are, is that not always the worst of the worst? You can never replace them. But that's the image of death row. Who's on death row? These are the people. They're beyond the pale of human beings like us. And then the guards bring him in. And it was a heavy mesh screen. I was separated from him by this heavy mesh screen. I'm locked in another room on the other side, and I looked through that mesh screen at his face for the first time. And you know, contemplation happens not just when we're on retreat or when we're at liturgy or when we're praying. When we see through and we all cry, holy, the holiness comes through right in the midst of life. And I looked at his face and I said, my God, he's a human being. I couldn't believe how human he looked. I couldn't believe, and he was smiling, and he said, sister, you drove all that way to see me. Thank you. And the 2 hours flew by because he was talking about his life, and he had a visitor, he had a presence. The spiritual gift that has been given to me over the 25 years of being with prisoners is that what you learn in it is the gift of presence. Because when you're visiting somebody in prison, you can't say, oh, let's go rent a DVD, let's go get some pizza. All you got is the cement walls and each other. And I've also learned that spiritual energy, when we are giving it, as we are called to give it, comes back into us. If I had $1 for everybody who says to me, sister, you must be tired, I could help all the nuns retire. You must be tired. You must be tired flying across the ocean, coming to us in England. I'm looking at your faces, and I know what we're experiencing here together. And this is a sign that we are in the vocation we're supposed to be doing. We're doing the work we're supposed to be doing because the energy comes back into us. Doesn't mean we don't get tired. And certainly there have been days as a teacher went on a Friday afternoon. I said, I wish we could have 3 years vacation. I've had it with them, especially if you're trying to do something like RE, where you got them fighting you all the way. Man, we don't want that stuff. It's boring. What's it got to do with me? And you see them trying to text in the classroom and all that kind of stuff. You face all this stuff I didn't have to face. I didn't have texting. You picked up some interesting notes every now and then that were passed. Saw how you were doing as a teacher. So the journey begins with, and I look and I go, whatever he has done, I know he's done a terrible crime. I don't know what it is yet. He's worth more than the worst thing he's ever done in his life. I know that. The transcendency of the person is there. Every person, all of us, are worth more than the worst thing we've ever done. The kids in our school, the people, the other teachers that we're with, the ones that drive us craziest. We cannot freeze frame any of us in the worst act of our life and say, now that's your essence. That's who you really are. You did that, sister? We didn't know you did that. And we throw it up on the screen here for everybody to see. And then to be told, this is who you are. Carla Faye Tucker, Texas, high on drugs, kills 2 people with a pickaxe. It couldn't have been worse. And then she bragged about it to everybody afterwards that it made her sexually high when she saw the blood. That's crazy. Goes to death row in Texas. I love this part. Steals the Bible. She said, I didn't know they gave him out free. She reads in 1 Corinthians that in Christ she could be a new creation. And that is indeed what she became. The warden knew it. Her fellow prisoners knew it. And she's up before Governor George Bush whether or not he'll commute her sentence. And he says, well, what has changing her life got to do with it? She did the crime, freeze-framed her. She pays the penalty, and she's killed. She's killed in the state of Texas. As they lifted her onto the gurney, she went, Lord Jesus, help them find a vein fast. The last words of her life were a prayer, gave her life over to God. When she was interviewed by journalists and asked if Governor Bush would commute your sentence, what would you do with your life? And she said, I know I'll be in prison the rest of my life, but I will minister to my fellow prisoners about Christ and how Christ can change your life. She awoke to love. That love was possible, began to live it, but she was killed anyway because the death penalty does not allow for life and it does not allow for love. And I've accompanied 6 people to execution, some of whom wanted to give their organs over for the life of others, at least the cornea of their eyes or their kidneys or no. The state won't allow that. No life comes out of this death. Punishment comes, and you pay. You pay with your life because you killed. I'm going to learn a lot, but Patrick Saunier was the first that I began to journey with. And then I was over in the Prison Coalition office, and I'm waiting till he trusts me enough, but I don't want to be naive. And I go into the office one day and I say, can I have some background information on the Saunier case? And they say, sure. And of course, these lawyers trying to save lives, they work with this all the time. They pull out all the files. It was an October afternoon, I remember, because they'd all left the office. They said, sister, when you leave, just pull the door. Now, I know Patrick Saunier. I've also met his brother, who's serving 2 life sentences for the same murder. That was my first legal question. How could you have a murder? One brother gets death, one brother gets life for the same murder. How'd they decide that? And as I'm going to learn how the legal system works, if there are 2 people involved in the murder and there are no other witnesses, if one of them is willing to give state's evidence against the other, they get a reduced sentence for doing that. How do we know we're getting the truth? And if we're going to play God in this and decide that you, we're going to call you the worst of the worst, and we're going to send you into eternity, don't you think we need to have a process of coming to absolute truth? And we know we're never going to come to absolute truth. We're always going to make mistakes because we're human. And the people given the most power, we know they're human too, and they got money coming in, or they got connections coming in. They work the power in favor of people who are connected and the people who are not connected. We know how it works. We're in a very human society. It is hard for justice to prevail. It is. It's hard in anything, not just the death penalty, in anything. And I open up the file folders. And I want you to hold on to what I told you. And I had to hold on to it in my own soul. About whatever he has done, he's worth more than the worst thing he's ever done, because I look down in this newspaper and I see the faces of two beautiful teenage kids like the kids I was talking to yesterday in the schools. A young man, David LeBlanc, 17 years old, Loretta Bourque, 18. There's their picture on the front page, and the parents had sent in their prom picture, their school dance picture. They're beautiful, and they are happy. And there's the headline, "Teenagers Found Murdered." And now I know that the two men I'm visiting on a November night shot in cold blood and killed two innocent teenage kids. And I am with them. I'm the spiritual advisor who's accompanying them, the murderers who killed these two kids. And the very first thing was guilt. What am I doing with them? The very second thing that rushed into my soul was the parents. Every parent's worst nightmare. That kids had gone to a football game on a Friday night and they had never seen him alive again. And now I'm going to move to the second arm of the cross, on the first arm, because the death penalty stretches us. It's countercultural. We are deep in the United States with punishing people, throwing them away, warehousing them, killing them. The perpetrator who did the crime. And on the other arm of the cross is the victim's family who is suffering. And the call of Christ to us. Are you going to choose sides? And how can we reach out in love to both? And what do they both need? And the second thing that came in my mind when I saw the pictures of David and Loretta were, I should do something. I should reach out to the parents. Everybody was Catholic. The Bourque family lost their daughter. The LeBlancs who lost their son. The Saunier family, Patrick and Eddie Saunier, the ones who did the killing, they're Catholic and I'm Catholic. And I'm thinking, but being Catholic's got nothing to do with it. It's that I ought to reach out to those parents who are, and I don't. I'm scared. I'm not. I just go, they're not going to want to see me. And you see their anger, just even in the clip of the film. He's not a person, he's an animal. And the family's saying, you never know when you see your daughter go out of the door that you're never going to see her alive again. Some parents say, the last thing I said to my daughter when she left was about the hem of her skirt, because the hem was out, and I said, honey, you need to get a pin and fix that hem. Then she's out of the door and she's out of my life, and that's the last I see her. And I talked about the hem of a skirt. I stayed away from the victims' families. I did nothing. I didn't write a note. I didn't do anything to say, I'm so sorry about your son, about your daughter. And I met them at the worst possible time in terms of polarities that I could have met a victim's family, because it was at a pardon board hearing a week before the execution. There was a pardon board hearing. It's set up as an extra level in this, just in case people got the death penalty in trial, but maybe there might be mitigating circumstances. The governor has appointed 5 people to listen to both sides and see if perhaps we'll give clemency. They never do. It's purely a formality. I don't know that. I don't know anything. I know I'm going to the pardon board meeting, hearing, public hearing, to speak to the pardon board and ask them not to kill Patrick Saunier. And that's when I met the victim's family. And the victim's family is all geared for this meeting because they're told by the prosecutor, this is the last legal hoop you got to jump through to get your justice. And what the victim's family has, everybody's saying to them, as Lloyd LeBlanc, the father of David, told me later, is, you had the ultimate loss. You lost your child. Well, he's going to pay with his life, And that is going to give you closure. And that is going to give you justice. And that is going to give you healing. And that is going to honor your dead child. That is what the culture is telling the victim's family. And so they're there. They're at the pardon board hearing with all their friends and all their relatives. And I'm there with a lawyer and one other person. And that's when they meet me. And how could they not see me as an enemy? What am I doing at the pardon board? Because they see if you're not asking for the execution, you must be against them. And I bumped into him. It was outside the building while the pardon board was voting, bumped into the Bork family first who had lost their daughter. They were furious at me. And I don't blame them. They conducted themselves with great dignity, actually. They couldn't avoid me. We were both walking toward each other. They averted their gaze and they walked by in silence. And right behind them was the other victim's family, the boy's family, the ones who had lost David. And they walked right up to me. And Lloyd LeBlanc said, Sister Helen, all this time you've been visiting those two brothers. You didn't want to come to see us. I haven't had anybody. You can't believe the pressure on me with the death penalty. I said, Miss LeBlanc, I'm so sorry. I didn't know you wanted to see me. It was such an act of cowardice. You know, I had a really good editor when I wrote Dead Man Walking. I had a good editor, became my spiritual advisor at this part I'm going to tell you about right now, because when I wrote about not reaching out to the victims' families, I just said I'd never done it before and I didn't know what to do. And he goes, Helen, you're kind of letting yourself off a little easy, aren't you, on this? This is a big mistake, not reaching out to those families. And then he said to me, it was cowardice, wasn't it? You were scared, weren't you? I said, yeah. He said, when you write your book, don't just take people on the peaks of the waves when you did it all right. Take them in the troughs when you did it wrong. And here's this man now standing before me saying, Sister, I pray in a little chapel, come pray with me. He was the gracious one. He's the hero of this book and of this story. He's the first victim's family I ever met who had suffered such an excruciating loss of his only son, and who brought me through his own journey in which he reached a place where he was not consumed by the hatred. And here's how he described it to me. He said, Sister, at first, with everybody telling me, Lord, you got to be for the death penalty, he said, I tried to go there. I said, they're right. I wish I could pull the switch myself. Look how Eula, my wife, is suffering. Look how all of us are suffering. They deserve it. They deserve to pay with their life. And he said, but you know, I didn't like the way it made me feel. Because you see, sister, I've always been a kind person. I love to help people. It's just who I am. I learned it from my mom and dad. And I'm good with my hands. I can fix anything. So when you're going to come to my house, you're going to see lawnmowers and all these things people bring me. And if I'm on the road real late at night, I see somebody broken down on the side of the road, I'm going to stop and help them because it's who I am. And I love to help people. And then I went to that angry place like, yeah, I want to see them dead. I don't care about their mother. And then he said, I didn't like the way that made me feel. And I said to myself, They killed my son, but I'm not going to let them kill me. I'm going to do what Jesus said. And he set his face to go down the road of forgiveness. The healers in the United States now that are helping to end the death penalty are victims' families who are standing up saying, don't kill for us. When New Jersey repealed the death penalty, 62 murder victims' families had appeared before them to tell their stories and say, you're going to tell us we're going to wait 10 or 15 or 20 years and you're going to summon us to sit on the front row as you kill the one who killed our loved one, and watching the killing of that person is supposed to heal us? Or some of them, like a father who couldn't help but break down as he told the story of his little daughter who so loved life. She'd been abducted by a crazy man and killed. And he said, I'm walking with her. I have her by the hand. We're walking on the pavement, on the sidewalk, and there's a little bug. And she said, Daddy, don't step on that bug, because that bug's alive, Daddy. We shouldn't smush the bug. And my little girl, who so loved life that she respected life and the bug, and I'm going to ask for the death of a sick man to honor her. I'll meet all these human beings. They've all been thrown in the fire. I haven't been thrown in the fire. I haven't had anybody I loved ripped out of my life in violence. But they have. And the grace that it has been to be with them. And Lloyd LeBlanc was the first. And he taught me that forgiveness is first and foremost something that you give yourself so that you are not consumed by the hatred and lose your own life. Maybe that's the deepest meaning of forgiveness. It's not basically what he's giving to them. It's God's grace in him, enabling him not to lose the love and integrity of life that is his, so that he gets consumed and he becomes a different person. And he's living out of the anger. Grace comes to us, and it is always about transforming us. And when we get thrown into these crucibles where we are tested, and God's grace, they are witnesses to the grace. As it says in the letter to the Hebrews, a cloud of witnesses. We have them, and you have them here. Of people who have suffered, of people who have been violated as children, who've endured bullying at school, or young people on their way toward life that are being put down and think that they're nothing. And the suffering is all around us. And the compassion of Christ is inside of us. And that's what started happening to me at St. Thomas, because I saw the suffering of people. I saw that they were suffering, and I entered into their suffering. And that's how we get transformed. We encounter people who are suffering, and it makes us leave ourselves and say, I gotta do something. And in the end, and the continuation of this journey, which goes on, the journey continues. I'm with murder victims' families who are teaching me, and I realize how alone they are. I realize when I went to these support groups, everybody leaves them alone, because person after person at the support meeting was just saying, nobody knows what to do with our pain, and they all stay away from us. And to form communities of love and support. Don't think we have to have a huge committee in the diocese going to start organizing everything. To reach out in love and care and make things happen. And we need to teach that to our young people. Leadership, you know what it means? Somebody sees a need, steps in there and starts doing something. There's no reason why when you go back after today, 2 or 3 of you that have felt your hearts catch on fire with this can't meet together and say, let us gather as a community together to pray together, to pull together, and to see what are we going to do and initiate. God's grace in us makes us initiate things, not wait for somebody to say, we will now organize the committee. Would you like to be part of the committee? To see the need, to reach out, 2 or 3. You could start with 2 people in the school. What are we going to do to reach our kids at another level that we feel, where faith, and we can deepen their spirits. Let's do something. Doesn't have to be by the book. And then I was with Patrick Saunier when they killed him. I didn't know that was going to be like another baptism in my life. That was unbelievable to me, that there was now this protocol of death, and after knowing this man for 2 years and knowing his agony, knowing his remorse, knowing his sorrow, how when they dim the light on the tier on death row, at midnight, he'd kneel down with his Bible. I have his Bible. I have the Psalms that he underlined that I had never noticed before. Oh God, they plot to take my life. They consider me a worm and not a human being, but you are my rock, on you I stand. Or Psalm 51, oh God, have mercy on me for my great sin. Have mercy on me. And I'm with him, and I've known him now. And now they're going to kill him. And it's a protocol. It is a chilling protocol of death, because everything's laid out. They don't let you bring a radio or any kind of music with you in the death house because they don't want to stir emotions, because the guards who have to do the killing have got to do their job. So we don't want you listening to music. We don't want you to, we just want you to, we're going to come to your cell and take you, and we want you to walk quietly and accept your death. And we're going to strap you down and kill you. What happens to the guards in this? I tell the story of some of them in Dead Man Walking. Their stories are coming out. Now, we've been killing people in the United States for over 28 years. And they're the strap-down teams. They're the ones close to the killing. And they get them together before. You're not killing anybody tonight. Even though after you execute somebody, on the death certificate, cause of death, they got to write the truth of what happened there tonight. It's called homicide. The killing of a human being by another human being. They may put in all other kind of words like legal homicide. Texas puts legal homicide by way of execution. But it's a homicide on somebody rendered defenseless. And when I did have a chance, it's in the second book, to have a direct dialogue with Pope John Paul about the death penalty, and I gave him pastoral experience, put it into his fatherly lap. Pastoral experience of being with people in the death penalty. I said, Your Holiness, when I'm walking with a man to execution, and he says, Sister, just pray. God holds up my legs. He wants to walk with dignity. I said, he's been rendered defenseless. He's strapped down hand and foot. And he asked me to pray that God holds up his legs. There is no dignity in this death. Does the Catholic Church only uphold the dignity of innocent life? What about guilty life? And that's a story for another day, but Pope John Paul is the one that changed the Catholic Catechism, and the one then that stood before us in St. Louis after the Catechism was changed to put the death penalty in with the other pro-life issues. A culture of life across the board, not just for the innocent, but for the guilty. And my experience of accompanying Patrick to his execution, he had tried to save me, to protect me. He said, you can't be there at the end, sister, because it could scar you to see this. It's electrocution. They're going to pump 1,900 volts through his body. And all I knew, and here it is, the grace welling up, all I knew was, Patrick, there's no way you're going to die with all those faces of the witnesses who want to see you die and not have one loving face. I'll be there. You look at me. I'll be the face of Christ for you. I wasn't being a hero. I was doing what you would do. And where you do it every day in the situation. And you know who the people are that other people don't like. You know how we put each other down. And you're the one that could be the face. Say, look, you're a human being. You're the face. We are the face. We're the only face Christ has in the world. We're the only hands Christ has in the world. The only eyes, the only heart. The legs, we're it. And if we don't make him incarnate in the world and make him alive, he doesn't exist for people. Through us. Through us. It's all God's work in us. And it's a beautiful thing to just feel ourselves lifted up and transformed and out of our little ego and out of our, oh, everybody's looking at me funny. To be lifted out of ego, to get past ourselves, to be able to love in a way we scarcely even understand. It just pours out of us. And when I looked at him and he looked at my face, I walked out of that execution chamber and I threw up. I'd never watched a human being be killed in front of my eyes. I knew the Supreme Court said it was legal. I knew 87% of people in Louisiana in 1984, when that execution happened, supported the death penalty. And then my mission was born to the people, because I remember thinking very distinctly, it brings me to you today, because you know it's more than about the death penalty, don't you? You know that every wound in society is in this punishment of what happens to poor people, the racism that's in it, our wanting always to use violence to solve social problems. It's all in it. You know that, don't you? That it's more than just about when somebody murders somebody you love. It's about when anybody hurts anybody we love or betrays somebody we love. And what are we going to do? Will we respond with love like Lloyd LeBlanc, they're not going to kill me, not be consumed to get even, or mercy and compassion and love? And it's a daily thing with us. And I remember thinking the people are never going to see this because it's like a secret ritual. It's done behind prison walls in the United States. People never see the killing. I've been brought in as a witness. I got to tell the story. And then that part of the scriptures of Jesus looked at the crowd with compassion because he realized they were like sheep without a shepherd. What people hear from the politicians who have the easiest political symbol in the world, that they are going to be tough on crime, is not the truth. I had seen the truth. And I also know the hearts of the American people are not vengeful people who want to have a killing for a killing. They never think about it. They never think deeply about it. And that's why when that film, I worked with Tim Robbins and Susan Sarandon on that film, and it happened on the Feast of the Annunciation that the Academy Awards, and God took it and lifted it into the world. It's to bring people on a journey, and that's what spirituality is about, and that's what true art ought to be about. Take people into the deeper recesses of our hearts so that we say, do we have to answer one killing with another killing, even though we make it legal? It's a privilege to be with you today. I know you got slung onto the bus. I know the decision was made out of your hands. Willy-nilly, in the currents of the river, we've encountered each other today. It's a privilege. Bishop, a privilege to be with you, with the people here, and David and all the people who made the day happen. And I lay my story before you. I lay my witness before you. It's my life. It's what God's doing in my life. And with the hope and the prayer for you that the spark is enkindled in your precious life. There's a poet, Mary Oliver, and she has a line, and I'll leave you with it. I say it to young people all the time. And so what are you going to do with your one wild, precious life? Thank you.
Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this episode. Tune in again next week for some more wise words on how you can find that deep peace that's already in your heart and mind. Now, if you're thinking that there's someone else that you know that could be helped to find this peace, then please feel free to share the link with them. And so, until we meet again, may you have a safe and a blessed life. And may you experience the blessing of God both within you and upon you.